Okay, let's dive into this. If the AI does the thinking, the AI owns the value. Man, that is a heavy statement, right? You know, right now across the globe, there's this very real, very palpable anxiety about artificial intelligence. Everyone's asking, are we going to be replaced? Is human labor literally becoming obsolete? Well, today we're going to look at a collection of incredibly provocative texts that tackle these exact anxieties head-on.
Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're unpacking what are known as the Sovereign Intelligence Manifestos. These four source texts, they basically act as a unified, intense survival guide for the future of human work. They completely redefine how you and I should be interacting with machine intelligence. Now, we're not here to take sides on the sheer intensity of the author's language today. Instead, we're just going to break down exactly what this manifesto actually says, impartially, so you can fully grasp this massive paradigm shift. Now, what's really interesting about this roadmap is how it structures the journey. We're going to start with the new evolution of work, explore the trap of AI outsourcing, define the architect and the engine, open up the AI Master's Toolkit, map out the forbidden human territory, and finally, face the ultimate choice. Let's get right into it. All right, Section 1, the new evolution of work. We are moving from muscle to machine to mind.
So, the source text grounds its entire argument in history through what it calls the ancestry of effort. Think about it. For millennia, during the subsistence age, human value was literally measured in physical calories. Then, boom, the 18th century hits. The Industrial Revolution happens. We figured out how to harness physics, steam and steel, and humans shifted from being the actual engine to being the machine operator. Jump to the late 20th century, we enter the information age. We shifted our effort from slaving atoms to slaving bits. We became knowledge workers. But here's where the text throws a massive curveball. It argues that the traditional knowledge worker, completely obsolete now. Today, we've entered the age of intent, which is defined by synthesizing AI. Meaning, this is AI that doesn't just look up facts, it actively creates net new material. The text argues that if your job is just to know things and repeat them, well, the machine has already won.
And that brings us to Section 2, the AI outsourcing trap, or what the manifesto dramatically calls the Great Intellectual Abdication.
The text identifies this massive, gaping pitfall in how most of us are currently using AI. It breaks it down into two buckets, a passive approach versus an active approach. The passive approach is basically what happens when you use AI just to escape doing the work. You hit generate without a vision, effectively outsourcing your own creativity to an algorithm. The text warns that doing this produces work that might be, technically correct, but it's spiritually empty. If you let the AI take the steering wheel, you become what the author brilliantly terms a middleman for mediocrity. On the flip side, the active approach requires elevating your work. You aren't avoiding the effort, you're directing it. You maintain the creative vision, and you set strict constraints for the machine.
So the crucial point is summarized perfectly in this rather harsh critique from the source. You aren't using AI, you're being phased out by it. Ouch, right? But the manifesto views this intellectual laziness not just as a bad habit, it sees it as a literal threat to your daily workflow and your career survival. If you surrender your critical thinking, you surrender your value in the marketplace, for sure.
Which leads us straight into Section 3, the architect and the engine, exploring the master system philosophy.
To survive this shift, the text insists we absolutely must adopt the master system philosophy. The human has to become the architect, while the AI serves purely as the engine. Now, the source uses some very aggressive terminology here, repeatedly talking about slaving the AI. Just to be clear, it uses this term purely as a metaphor to describe the cold, calculated extraction of utility from a machine that has no feelings. Think of it like this. The architect, that's you, provides the why and the vision. The AI engine provides the how at lightning speed. You bear the risk and the moral compass because the machine, it has zero business sense. Most importantly, you provide the deviant, innovative human taste, while the AI is simply a mirror of the average. It's like a giant puzzle. You hold the blueprint, and the AI is your army of 10,000 masons ready to build it.
And this dynamic creates a brand new professional category, the architect of outcomes. The text defines this as someone who moves from being a simple doer of tasks to a director of results. See, in the old world, your value was tied to your execution. But in the AI world, execution is incredibly cheap. It's essentially infinite. Actually, to put that into perspective, a repetitive data sorting task that might have taken a junior analyst an entire week can now be spun up flawlessly in a matter of seconds. Therefore, you're no longer paid for your mere labor execution. You are paid entirely for your judgment, your curation, and your human vision. All right, let's move to Section 4, the AI Master's Toolkit and how we actually go about weaponizing this superworker.
The Manifesto isn't just a bunch of high-level philosophy. It actually provides a highly tactical toolkit. These are the actionable strategies the text says you need to bypass the junior phase of any project. First up is prompt engineering and iterative direction. This means programming intent, not just typing basic questions into a chat box. Second is agentic orchestration. Think of this as hiring an AI manager, not just an AI intern. They actually execute complex, multi-step logistics for you behind the scenes. Third is synthetic synthesis. This is conducting a knowledge siege to extract that precious 1% of valuable signal from 99% of data noise. And finally, vibe coding and prototyping, which allows non-developers to build working tools and manifest their concepts into reality at practically zero cost. It's a real game changer.
And this brilliantly illustrates what the text calls brutal iteration. To wield these tools effectively, you need an editor-in-chief mindset. You never, ever accept the first output. You don't just take what the machine gives you and call it a day. You rigorously challenge it. You have to treat the AI like a high-speed forge, hammering and refining the work through generation after generation of pressure, until literally only the purest form of your specific vision remains.
But listen, there are boundaries. Welcome to Section 5, the forbidden human territory, or the things you must never surrender.
The Manifesto establishes very firm boundaries to prevent what it calls intellectual atrophy. This beautifully compares what we absolutely should automate versus the fierce, messy human elements that silicon just cannot simulate. Yes, for sure, delegate the brute force research, the basic coding, the formatting, and all that administrative sludge. Please, let the machine write your tedious weekly update emails. But look at that right column. That is your forbidden territory. Never surrender your critical thinking and first principles. Never outsource your personal voice and narrative, because writing is the process of thinking itself. The machine cannot replicate your moral and ethical judgment, your empathy, or your unique taste and aesthetic vision. The text argues that if you delegate these, you essentially lose your soul in the work. But here's the magic. When you fiercely protect that forbidden territory and leverage the machine for the rest, the math changes entirely. The text makes this incredibly empowering claim. In the industrial age, one person with a machine could do the work of 100. But in the AI age, one single person, armed with a clear vision and a fleet of AI agents, can do the work of 1,000. It's an absolutely unprecedented era of individual leverage.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, the ultimate choice, the sovereign versus the dependent.
Let's move on and see how this builds to the text's intense climax. The Manifesto warns of a coming stark class divide in the workforce. On one side, you have the dependent class. These are people who outsource their thinking entirely. The text bluntly describes them as fast but hollow, a replaceable, fleshy interface for algorithms. Yikes! On the other side, though, is the sovereign class. These individuals use AI not as a crutch, but as an exoskeleton. They use it to run at the speed of thought and to radically amplify their own human intent.
Ultimately, it all boils down to this final, provocative ultimatum presented by the Sovereign Intelligence Manifestos. Will you be replaced by the machine, or will you command it? Will you let AI be a crutch that eventually makes you forget how to walk, or will you strap it on as an exoskeleton to build your vision faster than you ever thought possible? The text makes its stance perfectly clear. The machine has no soul. Give it yours. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope this deep dive helps you navigate the incredible shift happening in our world right now. See you next time.